Hey everybody, welcome in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes day by day. Thanks for being here. It's the 12th of March because it's after midnight. And I'm trying to do this right before I go take a shower and go to bed. Best of luck to me, I know. Thanks you for your thoughts and prayers. It is what it is. Guys, mention the gerbil video in the free-to-play. Some very problematic stuff in there, I gotta admit. But, I think the lesson is don't rush. At least that's what I took from the gerbil. Gerbil was talking about Ahsoka in a little bit of that video it's from the 11th. If you want to go back and check it out, he was talking about Ahsoka and how big, despite how expensive she was, she's not that good. And I'm like, trying to figure out, is that why? Why did you rush? Because do you remember when can't remember if this happened with Jedi Cal, but I remember this maybe being talked about with Mama Mandalore and how there weren't a lot of early adopters with Mommy Mandalore. Because of the way of obviously the wonkiness of her thing, but also because it kind of felt like there wasn't anything you needed her for. And then obviously things happened. They put Mandalore in wrote, and now she's everybody kind of feels like everybody's levitating towards her. But with Ahsoka, she's been out for four months at this point, and it's like there's nothing for her. She's a team, but I hear tale that Ezra Exile, is that the one? The new Ezra, the one that is the lifter for Ahsoka. That I hear tell that he's being used with Rey instead of the team that he was designed for, which means that Ahsoka is even. I mean, doesn't that mean that Ahsoka is even worse? Right? And he was talking about how it's been 8+ months at this point since we've had a new raid. How it's been 2 years since we've had a new GL ship. How we went from having 2 GL level characters per year, where first it was 2 GLs a year, and then it was a ship and a GL to 1 GL, and they barely got her in at the end of the year because they were like the 50 marquees, plus you need to gear 9, plus they ended up doing coming with the Balin requirements at the same time, which is like weird. And it's just very I don't know what to say. I don't know if it's very cringe inducing, but it's very weird. And Obviously I heard what the guy was saying, you know, but I mean, that's going to be right now. I can say this because we're still in this lull where we don't have anything coming out. Um, and that could literally change at any time. But to me, that's a reason not to be an early adopter. Now, there is sometimes when being an early adopter, because it's like, would you be saying this if Ahsoka had been a banger? And obviously the answer to that is no, because then of course Turbo wouldn't have been saying what he was saying about Ahsoka, because there would have been no, you know, no question that she was well worth the money. But it's just where we are now. That's not a thing. And so obviously people can be critical of that based upon that reason alone. And he was being. But the fact still remains that we haven't had a GL ship in 2 years. Then we only got two ships last year. And the comeuppance did help the Redis. He made it better. And then because I think to just make people forget that they didn't have a GL ship, that they didn't have a GL capital ship last year, they came up with the one pun. And the one pun is, it's the hotness. But then the one pun was and was so good that they had to go back and fix the Leviathan, because the Leviathan was, it rendered the Leviathan basically ship high in transit, if you know what I'm saying. And then the gerbil also pointed out that, the Leviathan was so jacked up to begin with that um that it had to be fixed 3 or 4 times separately. And that is like, obviously that's not a good sign, because obviously that's a very suboptimal. That's not something you want. That's not something anybody looks forward to, but it's facts. That ship is so, but it's like, and so you have a your last GL ship was not good, was not great. You have your last GL being underperforming. You have a raid that has been out longer than they said it would be. They have a territory battle which has been around for 2.5 years. And yes, they keep expanding it. And honestly, I think they can continue to do that into perpetuity. It's just a matter of when and when are they? And honestly, I think that maybe expanding territory battles is kind of putting them more behind the 8 ball, because their staff is being split between how many different projects? I mean, obviously we don't know the number. It's at least 2. I think we can say that, at least in some capacity. And whether that's Marvel Strike Force, which Given the state of the cinematic universes of the MCU and the Star Wars universe, can you really blame them for putting their stuff into Strike Force with the success of um, Deadpool and Wolverine and all the other movies they came out with recently? Because you don't have. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm not seeing a lot of negative press for. I saw negative press for Miss Marvel and the Marvels movie, which was, but I don't see the level of negative press for, and by press I don't mean actual press, I mean negative, like Star Wars Theory. Is there a Marvel version of Star Wars Theory? I think it's kind of the critical drinker has not said anything overtly bad about the Marvel universe as he said about um, Kathleen Kennedy in the Star Wars universe. And so obviously I think that because of that, I think that's why the resources are probably more on MSF than they are on Swgoh. And largely I would lay that blame at one person, and I think we can all guess who that is. But the fact still remains, my friends, that people are not going to sit around for very long. I mean, they'll sit around for a while and wait for you to bring something to this game, but call me crazy. But if 2025 ends up resembling 2024 in that, if we don't get a new raid in the next 2 months, so by May 4th, that's not going to bode well. If we don't get an announcement about a GL. Now, keep in mind that this Jedi Vanguard that's about to come out is probably going to take us probably up into close to that May 4th date. Now, the question remains is, will the Jedi Vanguard and whatever else is in the game that can be used in that raid, in the new raid, is that going to be viable enough? Because what they're essentially saying is that they're essentially planning it or making it look like sort of like they did last year, where they could potentially come up with a couple of Pancho Bro-esque characters, and they could essentially put the next character after Jocasta Nu in Conquest, and then we could have the Jedi Vanguard essentially be the Gungans of this year. And then you would essentially have some random characters that nobody's really thinking about as players for the raid. And if that's the case, that's fine, as long as they don't copy and paste the mechanics of this raid. And quite frankly, I think that's the way it's shaping up. But then after that, are we gonna get ship? So after this Jedi Vanguard thing, are we gonna get a ship? I kind of feel like we have to. And I really hope that they don't make the mistake of putting an Acolyte GL or Epic confrontation in the back half of the year, because I think that would be a huge missed opportunity. I think they could be much more successful if they went comic like they did with Dr. Aphra. But I don't know about enough about the comics to know who that would be. But I think they would have a much more positive response with a comic book based character, than they would someone from the Acolyte. I mean, they could maybe even the Skeleton Crew would be more safer, but I mean, that's just because they haven't done anything substantial with the Star Wars IP, because as far as I know, this is the only thing indoor which is about to hit. Here in about 4 or 5 weeks. As far as I know, that's going to be the only show this year. And I don't know if Mando and Grogu is supposed to come out this year or next year. But I don't know. But hopefully they're kicking some tires on something other than Ahsoka season 2 for next year. Because if they don't, and maybe they've got something up their sleeve that they're hiding for Star Wars Celebration that they're going to come out with and announce it Star Wars Celebration for the second half. Hopefully that's the case. Do I know that's the case? No. But I don't think there's any question that if they do, then there's going to be a more than a little possibility that it's going to turn into a South Park meme, if you know what I'm saying. And if you don't, just do you even critical drinker? But yeah, so that's where I am. I mean, it's GeoShip is please raid with the Jedi Vanguard with whatever else we got in the back already, please. And then just no Acolyte. That's where I am. Because, if they do come with the Acolyte, obviously, I think there's a high probability that they Peridea patrol it, or at least try to, and maybe even make that team Great Mother levels of good, because, of course. But other than that, I don't know. But I'm hoping that. I'm hoping they actually make it good. One more thing, I've been playing a lot of The Old Republic. If you're interested, please. It's pretty good. I'll talk more about tomorrow. Hopefully, if I remember, I didn't mean to talk about it this late in the video. If you're still here, leave me a booyah. Let me know that you hear me. If you want to hear more about Swgoh, just let me know. I mean, more about The Old Republic, let me know. I'll be sure to talk about it. I'll probably talk about it regardless, but it is what it is. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you. God bless. Hold the line, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.